Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, we are from group 12. Our group consists of 3 people, that is me, Dianti Anjani Putri, Nurina Nasirah, and Prasintia Wulandari. Today, we are going to explain material about verb meaning and argument structure. Next. There are 3 contents that we're going to discuss. The first is verbs and participants, and the second is verb classes and alternation, and then the last is meaning and construction. The first speaker is Resintia Wulandari. Resintia, times is yours.
And now I would like to explain about verbs and participants. Verbs. Verbs are typically accompanied by nouns which refer to the participants in the event or state the verb describes. And then participant will receive a range of morphosynthetic marks, case suffix, subject or object markers, and etc. In English, these distinctions are made clear by grammatical relations, the nouns coding, or better, the nouns phrase coding as subject, object, or indirect object of the verb. The first one is the traditional pictures thematic roles. This is a term used mainly in generative grammar. The theoretical tradition in linguistics in which these questions have mostly been explored. The standard explanation of the linking problem in generative syntax is first, the lexical entries, the representation of linguistic information associated with lexemes for verbs are assumed to include a specification of the types of argument they have associated with them. It was assumed that the possible arguments of all verbs could be classified into a small number of classes called thematic roles, participant roles, semantic roles, or theta roles. Next. The following list, based on the one in Carney, shows a commonly assumed set of roles. The first one is agent, the initiator of the action, experiencer, the entity that feels or perceives something, them, entity that undergoes an action, undergoes motion is experienced or perceived, goals is entity towards which motion takes place, recipient is subclass of goals for verbs involving a change of possession, source is entity from which motion takes place, location is place where the action occurs, then instrument is the object with which an action is performed, and beneficiary is one for whose benefit an event took place. Next, please. For English, an appropriate ranking might be something like this, with as outranks for subjects, possible thematic hierarchy for English. Again, itu lebih besar, lebih baik digunakan dari beneficiary dan lebih baik digunakan dari instrumen. Instrumen lebih baik digunakan daripada tema, dan tema lebih baik digunakan daripada goals atau source atau location. This ranking says that if there is an agent in the situation being referred, it will automatically be called as subject. In this absence of an agent, any beneficiary or experiencer will be given subject status, and so on. The evidence showing that agent outranks all other roles. Again, lebih banyak agent outranks beneficiary. The example is Bismarck helped the king. Then agent outranks experiencer. The example is Bismarck informed the king. Then agent outrankes the instrument. The example is Bismarck used a fake telegram. Next. The second is problem with thematic roles. The subject could be analyzed as both agent, initiator of the action, and theme, entity undergoing motion. And the example is John rolled down the hills. In response to data like this, some researchers have suggested that nouns may instantiate two thematic roles simultaneously. See from the Jack Kendorf in 1990. Then if thematic role doesn't determine subject selection in these cases, perhaps it never does. The example is Mary owns the book or the book belongs to Mary. Next. The books from that sentence is presumably instantaneous. The role of them. Mary is less clear, but perhaps beneficiary is the most appropriate label. In any case, own and belongs show a contradictory ranking of arguments. In cases like this, the thematic hierarchy predicts the correct subject-object choice for only one of the verbs. For the other, there must be some other explanation. There are two types of verbs in the lexicon. Those whose argument linking properties conform to the thematic hierarchy and don't need to be separately learned, and those whose arguments don't observe the hierarchy and so do need to be learned. Supporters of the hierarchy is the arguments of most verbs are assigned to subject and object position in accordance with the hierarchy. Next. The fact that alternatives which violate the thematic hierarchy are the exception rather than the rule means that the best policy is to allow the exceptions argument linking to be a part of the information included in its verb's lexical entry, leaving the thematic hierarchy to determine all the rest. As noted by Neumayer, thematic role hierarchy have also been appealed to as the explanation of a range of other grammatical phenomena. Whether thematic hierarchies should be written as part of the explanation of linking depends on a number of tricky meta-theoretical issues. In other words, issue about the circumstances in which one theoretical explanation should be preferred to another. Next. And the third is proto-roles. Doughty proposed a solution to some of the problems with thematic roles. The first component of Doughty's solution was the suggestion that the different participant roles are simply not discrete categories at all, but rather are cluster concepts like the prototypes of roads and horse flowers. This means is that the boundaries between different roles are fuzzy. An argument isn't classified as either an agent or say or an instrument. Instead, it's classified as more or less agent-like. The second aspect of Doughty's proposal was that thematic roles are based on entailments of verbs meaning. A verb entailments are those prepositions that must necessarily be true whenever the verb itself is true. For example, consider the subject argument, Gavrilo, and the verbs murder, nominate, and interrogate. Next. Doughty gave the following verbs as examples. Volitional action is an entailment of kill. Traffic accidents kill without being volitional. Intending to perform the act named by the verb isn't shared by convenience. Then causation isn't shared by look at. Then motion or external change isn't shared by understand. These arguments, like some of the agent entailments, but they are still treated as subject. Doughty proposed that only two role types are needed to account for linking. He called these role types proto-agent and proto-patient. Each proto-role is identified by a number of properties. Next. The next slide will be explained by Dianti Anjani. Dianti Anjani, time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Resintia. As she already explained about the contributing properties for the agent protorol and contributing properties for the patient protorol, I will explain more what what are kinds of them. The first is contributing properties for the agent protorol are volitional involvement in the event or state, and then this sentience and or perception, and then causing an event or change of state in another participant, and then movement or relative to the position of another participant, and the last is exists independently or the event named by the verb. And the second is contributing properties for the patient protorol. It undergoes change of state, and there's a new term called incremental theme, and then causally affected by another participant, and then stationary relative to movement or participant. And the last is does not exist independently of the event or not at all. Next slide, please. Doughty suggests that the argument with the most proto-agent entailments will be coded as subject, and the one with the most proto-patient entailments as object. This principle has two related corollaries. First, it is possible for some arguments to share the same role, have neither role, or qualify partially, but equally for both proto-roles. Second, if two arguments satisfy roughly the same number of proto-agent and proto-patient entailments, then either may be coded as subject or object. This is the case for passive verb, such as Joe likes sausage or sausage please Joe. In this situation, regardless of how it is described, both participants have just a single entailment each. Joe has the proto-agent entailment of sentience, and sausage has the proto-agent entailment of causation. Doughty says that neither argument has any other entailments. This means that each argument has equal likelihood to surface as subject. Next, please. Fourth is thematic relation and conceptual structure. In the traditional tetrarol system, verbs are associated in the lexicon with tetragrids, and it is the hierarchy that determines of how argument get into a verb, subject, and object position. The crucial dependence of argument structure on meaning isn't explicitly formalized. Argument structure cannot be read directly off the verb's meaning, but proceed via the intermediate stage of theta roles. This type of theoretical arrangement is somewhat redundant. Looking at the verb's meaning provided the justification for the theory's decision about what theta roles a verb was given, but precoded roles still constituted a separate aspect of the verb's lexical representation, independent of its meaning. Next. Explicit representation of verb meaning is therefore a prerequisite for a more unified theory of linking by Jack and Dove over just such a theory. Jack and Dove theory of semantic representation involves a decomposition of meanings into primitive elements, that is, be, go, cause, and so on. Consider Jack and Dove's representation of the conceptual structure underlying the following three sentences. The first is the door was open, and the sentence B is the door opened, and the sentence C, John opened the door. Sentence A is conceptually simplest, consisting simply of the state function B with two semantic arguments. Things here is refers to the door and property that refers to the openness. Now, sentence B. This has the same conceptual structure as A, except that it has added the incohative function, uh, which denotes the coming into being of an event. The addition of inch makes no difference to the thematic role in the sentence. A door still satisfies the definition of theme, and the last is cause. Uh, Cause is a two-argument function. The first argument is a thing. Here it refers to John, as we can see in the sentence C. The second is an event. Here it refers to the door becoming open. Jackendoff defines agent as the first argument of the event function cause. This make John agent in sentence C. Next. The other thematic roles are dealt with in exactly the same way. Source described above as the entity from which motion takes places is analyzed as the argument of the path function from goal. The entity towards the motion which motion takes places is the argument of the path function too. The experiencer argument, Jacob says, is presumably is an argument of an as yet unexplored state function having to do with mental states. This approach has an important consequences. Agent, theme, and the other role can be eliminated from the theory. Instead of agent, for example, we substitute the first argument of the predicate cause instead of theme. We substitute the single argument of go to go, stay, be, or orient. Jackendoff is claiming, in other words, that the term theme, agent, and so on are not primitives of semantic theory. Rather, they are relational notions defined structurally over conceptual structure. The types of semantic distinction conveyed by the different heteros or for Jagendoff underlying conceptual configurations are not the only semantic connection between a verb and its argument. Verbs also place selectional restrictions on their argument. The object of eat must be a solid, that of drink a liquid, that of read something visible, that of pay in one of its use an amount of money. Next. Next is verb classes and alternation. Next, please. Another problem case for the standard account of argument structure and thematic hierarchies is called argument structure alternation. Many verbs show not just one argument structure, but several. They can all appear in an array, bend, rip, the rice paper. But along with many other verbs, they can also appear in so-called middle alternation, which as the only subcategorized argument that is, for example, rice paper rips easily. And not all verbs allow the middle alternation. The verbs below, for instance, are impossible in the middle, which is meal pets Macintosh or Macintosh pets easily. Next. Then what is the factor in the meaning that makes the difference? Kiel and Kaiser suggest that verbs which do allow the middle alternation all express the bringing about of a change of states in the verb's object. This meaning is absent from the ones that don't allow the middle, like the word see, consider, believe, and notice. Two hunches about the relation between semantics and argument structure are a verb spinning determine what synthetic syntactic alternation it participates in, and verbs fall into semantically defined classes, which all show similar syntactic behavior with respect to their alternation. Next. Um, and the next will be delivered by Norina Nasira.
Okay, so the first one, the conative alternation. As the term conative Latin attempt suggests, this alternation conveys a reduced degree of effectiveness. For example, the zombies splash my face, or the zombies slash at my face. This suggests that the zombies directed the slashes at my face, but that their slashing didn't succeed in putting me out of action completely. I could still slash back at them, perhaps. As with the middle alternation, not all verbs allow the conative alternation. They touch its spout, or they touch at its spout. The body part processor ascension alternation. Many verbs can appear in this alternation. Terry touched Bill's shoulder. Terry touched Bill on the shoulder. With some verbs, though, this alternation is impossible. For example, Janet broke Bill's finger. Janet broke Bill on the finger. The next one. On the basis of these regularities, Levin identified the following classes of verbs, each one named after its most general member. The first one, breaks verbs. Break, crack, rip, shatter, snap. Next one, cut verbs. Cut, hack, saw, scratch, slash. Touch verbs. Pat, stroke, tickle, touch. Hit verbs. Bash, hit, kick, pound, tap, whack. The verbs in each class pattern in exactly the same way with respect to the middle, conative and body part processor as ascension alternations. The differences between these classes are basically semantic. What alternation a verb participates in is explained by its underlying semantic structure. These differences can be revealed by decomposing the verb's meaning into a set of basic sub-events involving primitives such as cause, act, become, like the Jacobovian decompositions already discussed. The particular way in which these sub-events are present in the meaning of any given verb is known as that verb's event structure. The third one is the causative or inchoative alternation. This semantic difference is correlated with a syntactic difference. Only break verbs participate in the causative inchoative alternation. The child broke the screen is defined as causative. The screen broke inchoative. The child cut the ribbon is defined as causative, and the ribbon cut is defined as inchoative. Similar behavior is found with the other verbs of each class. Jeff cracked, ripped, shattered, snapped his credit card. The credit card cracked, ripped, shattered, snapped. Jeff sawed, scratched, slashed the plank. The plank sawed, scratched, slashed. The causative or inchoative alternation appears to be confined to pure change of state verbs. Since hit and touch are change of state verbs, they don't display the alternation. Jeff touched, hit his credit card. The credit card touched or hit. The fourth one is locative alternation. For example, Seth loaded hay onto the cart. Seth loaded the cart with hay. Ruth sprayed water on the wall. Ruth sprayed the wall with water. Verb classes are similar in status of two natural classes of sounds in phonology, and the elements of meaning which serve to distinguish among the classes of verbs are similar in status to phonology's distinctive features. Furthermore, since these grammatically relevant phases of meaning are viewed as constituting the interface between a full-fledged representation of meaning and the syntax, most researchers have assumed that like the set of distinctive features, the set of such meaning elements is both universal and relatively small in size. This approach to alternation shares with Jackendorf the idea that a verb's syntactic possibilities are derived from the nature of its underlying semantic representation. This allows a far more economical description of the grammatical facts, instead of coding each verb separately with a list of the impossible syntactic alternations in which it can appear. The analysis simply derives these possibilities directly from the details of the verb's meanings. The next one is the meanings of construction. According to Kench and Mangalet, the construction of meaning is conceptualized as feature sampling from the explicit memory traces, with the constraint that the sampling must be contextually relevant both semantically and syntactically. In the most general terms, constructions are form meaning pairs, just like words. The difference is that the forms involved in constructions are on a higher level than individual lexemes. They are particular grammatical patterns which individual lexemes instantiate. Each construction can be instantiated by a large number of lexical items. This is most obvious with the intransitive motion construction, as well as appearing with verbs of motion like go, come, and manner of motion just like run, limp, hobble, slide, fall, and drop. The construction can be instantiated by verbs of sound emissions like buzz, siren, by verbs of bursting like burst and pop, and even by verbs such as sweat, like the runner sweat up the hill. The construction is thus a broad general pattern in the grammar. So this is 4 types of construction. There is cause motion, resultative, intransitive motion, and conative. So cause motion makes X causes Y to move Z. Resultative makes X causes Y to become Z. Intransitive motion makes X moves Y. And conative makes X directs actions at Y. The syntactic structure can be seen at the left side. Next one. The descriptions of the syntax of each constructions are essentially specifications of argument structure. An important features of a constructional account of the syntax semantics interface is that arguments can be subcategorized by the construction itself. For example, the highlighted phrase are all brought into the structure of the clause by the construction. They are not subcategorized by the verb. She sneezed the napkin off the table. The fly buzzed into the room. She kissed him unconscious. Sam kicked at Bill. All the sentences are grammatical without the highlighted phrases. This means that the highlighted phrases are adjuncts. The verbs do not obligatorily select them as part of the argument structure. It is important to see that adding the highlighted phrases doesn't simply add an argument to the verb. It also changes the basic meaning of the sentence. The next one, see the sentences below. He sliced the bread. It classified as transitive construction. Pat sliced the carrots into the salad. It classified as cause motion construction. Pat sliced Chris a piece of pie. It is classified as distransitive construction. Emerald sliced and diced his way to stardom. It is classified as way construction. Pat sliced the box open, and it is classified as resultative construction. So not all verbs can appear in all constructions. Take the cause motion construction. We can sneeze a napkin off the table, but we cannot use or waste a napkin off the table. Use and waste are not compatible with the cause motion construction. In the same way, the intransitive motion construction cannot be used with verbs of sense perception and smelled, noticed, listened into the room, or some verbs of striking like she hit knocked into the room, among others. And the presentation will be back to the moderator.
Okay, thank you, Norina and Resendia, for the explanation. So that's all for our material. If you have any question, please turn on your mic or raise hands for asking us a question. Yeah, please do ask us, please.
Hello.
Yeah.
My name is Sidki and I want to ask something.
Okay,
Uh,
Sidki.
Can you give more explanation about the new term incremental term? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Sidki, for your question. Maybe next question, everyone.
I want to ask.
Okay, Intan.
Um, Based on the PPT, there was explained about the following list assume set of roles. Then from that, is there any example from that? Could you give example using that roles?
Okay, okay, Intan, your question is noted.
Okay.
For the last questioner, maybe.
Me, I want to ask in a slide. In a slide, you said the examples when you add the highlighted phrases doesn't simply add an agreement to the verb, but also changes the basic meaning of the sentence. My question is, can you explain how does it change the basic meaning of the sentences? Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Selfie. All right, thank you for the questions. Now, please give us some time to find the answer. Okay, Sidki, I will answer your question. Your question is, can you explain more about the incremental themes? So the key to the idea of incremental theme is that the verb's object is progressively incrementally affected by the action of the verb as the event unfolds. For example, the sentence building a house happens over a certain period of time, with the house getting more and more built with each passing day. Similarly, a letter get more and more written as I write it. And the other example is the sandwich, more and more eaten as the eating progresses, and so on. To see how much has been built, written, or eaten, we need only compare the house, the letter, or the sandwich at two different points in the time during the event. The verb, in other words, affect the theme incrementally. Examples of non-incremental themes would be the objects of achievement predicates like reach the top, shoot the target, and so on. Uh, that is the answer. Is it clear enough, Sipki?
Okay, Jani, thank you for your explanation. I think that is enough for me.
Okay, thank you, Sitki. And the next question will be next question by Intan will be answered by Resintia.
So I want to answer the intense question. Based on the PPT, there was explained about the following list assumed set of roles. Then from that, is there any example from? Could you give example using that roles? And the first one is agent. Contoh dari agent itu ada kata kill. Kill is involves someone who kills or the killer and someone who is killed and the killing. Officiously, the killer is the initiator of the action and the killer is the entity that undergoes the action. This means that the kill is associated with agent and time participant. Atau kalau dari kata agen sendiri itu ada contoh lain kayak the lions devoured the wild beasts. Nah, devoured-nya itu yang masuk ke agen, yang jenis agen. Terus kalau dari kata experiencer itu ada contoh the rhesus monkey had never seen snow before. Nah, kata experiencers itu yang seen. Soalnya kan kalau experience itu juga berdasarkan dari sensor, kognitif, atau emotional experience. Gitu. Terus ada juga contoh lain kayak many people fear snakes. Nah, kata fear-nya itu yang mencerminkan dari experiencers. Terus kalau recipients itu contohnya they gave the workers a rise. Nah, kalimat yang menunjukkan recipientnya itu gave verb gave-nya. Karena recipient itu kan yang receive something in a situation. Terus ada juga contohnya I paid my landlord the rent. Kata paid-nya itu yang masuk ke recipient. Terus contoh lain locations itu contohnya we always eat breakfast in the kitchen. Nah, kata it-nya itu yang mencerminkan dari location. Karena kan itu location itu mencerminkan dari simply places. Contoh lain dari the cork has been bobbing under the bridge for an hour. Kata bobbing-nya itu yang kata bobbing itu contoh dari location. Terus kata goal. Goalnya itu contohnya we travel to Paris, quiet a bit in those days. Nah, travelnya itu yang contoh dari goal karena berhasil pergi ke Paris. Terus kalau dari theme itu hampir sama kayak agent. Contohnya this key opens the front door. Kata opens yang contoh dari theme. Terus ada they gave the workers rice, itu kata give juga. Yang bisa dijadikan give. So that's the example from this. Intan, is it clear? Is it enough? Halo Intan.
I think we can move to the next question from Selfie. The question will be answered. Please answer Selfie's question.
Can you hear my voice?
Yes, clear enough.
I'm sorry because there was a problem with the signal. So I'm going to answer Selfie's question. So I'm going to use the first sentence, which the sentence A, she sneezed the napkin off the table as the example. So on its own, sneeze is simply an intransitive verb denoting a bodily emotion. But when it is plugged into the cause motion construction, the construction supplies two extra arguments filled in by the napkin of the table and is paraphrased. She caused the napkin to move off the table. Complementation patterns are therefore the joint product of verbs and the constructions which they are placed. So when she sneezed, it's just like she literally sneezed. But when the phrase is the napkin off the table, it makes the sentence become a very different sentence and it changed its meaning. So Selfie, is it clear enough?
Yeah, Noreen, I got it. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, Nurin and Norina. Norina and Resdia, thank you for answering the question. So as we already answered all the questions, now it's time for absent. Resindia will call your name one by one. Resindia, can you hear me?
Yes, Jenny.
Okay.
Okay, I will call your name. Ade. Ade Rizky.
Hadir. Present.
Alda Hamida.
Present, Miss.
Anggita. Anggita. Oke, Anggita ada. Donan.
Present, present.
Anak. Anak. Fahmi.
Hadir.
Fadli.
Present.
Fahri. Fahri.
Hadir,
Fakih.
hadir. Fahri hadir.
Fakih.
Fakih hadir, Fakih.
Fauziah.
Hadir.
Fayat.
Hadir.
Feni.
Hadir.
Ferry.
Hadir, Miss.
Garda.
Hadir.
Haifah.
Hadir.
Intan.
Hadir. Present, ma'am.
Ikhfa.
Hadir.
Irfan.
Hadir.
Dianti Anjani.
Hadir.
Hovifatus. Hovifah. Mawar.
Hadir.
Nilda. Mita.
Hadir.
Mutiara.
Hadir, Mutiara hadir.
Nadia.
Hadir.
Nurina.
Hadir.
Nurul Rizki.
Present.
Renata.
Hadir.
Riris.
Hadir.
Selfie.
Hadir.
Sena.
Hadir.
Siti.
Hadir.
Siti Nurhamidah. Siti Nurhamidah. Taufik.
Hadir, Resim.
Zalika.
Hadir.
Hadir.
Dibilang ya. Anak atau uswatun hasanah.
Hadir.
Terus Hovifah.
Hadir. Hovifah hadir, Resin.
Sampai Siti Nurhamidah. Berarti Midah nggak masuk. Ini dong. So that's all, Yani.
Okay.
Thank you.
Resin. Belum ada.
Iya, Wilda, udah kok.
Mawar hadir ya, Resin.
Ya, Mawar.
Zalika.
Udah.
Oke.
Ada lagi? Oke, kalau nggak ada. Kembalikan ke Anjani.
Oh, yeah. All right. Thank you everyone for joining this meeting and pay attention to our material. And we are apologize if there is any mistake. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam
Waalaikumsalam
Waalaikumsalam.
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you.